Welcome to my channel of Gill Master Stories. Don't forget to subscribe button and press on the bell icon for more inspiration and mind-blowing stories. A convenience store robbery, a desperate thief, and a victim who refuses to stay silent. What happens when courage meets justice? Andre's story will keep you on the edge of your seat and leave you questioning how far you'd go to take back control. It was just another Wednesday evening at Henderson's Market, a small convenience store tucked between a laundromat and a bustling bus stop in downtown Indianapolis. Andre Johnson, 34, stood behind the counter, his sharp eyes scanning the room as he organized the bills in the cash register. He wasn't just any employee, he was the backbone of this place. The guy who always picked up extra shifts and stayed late when someone else called out. For Andre, this job wasn't just about making ends meet. It was his lifeline, a way to support his wife Lauren and their two young boys. That night, a steady stream of customers came and went, some picking up snacks, others grabbing last-minute groceries. Andre greeted each one with a friendly nod and a warm, "How you doing tonight?" His shift had been uneventful so far, just the way he liked it, but in the back of his mind, he knew that trouble didn't always announce itself. Around 9:45 p.m., as the streetlights flickered outside, a man entered the store. His hood was pulled low over his face, and he walked with a deliberate pace that immediately set Andre on edge. The man didn't grab a basket, didn't glance at the shelves. Instead, he made a beeline for the counter. Andre had seen all kinds of people in his years working retail. Those who looked shady but were harmless, and those who seemed normal until they weren't. But there was something about this man that felt off. As the stranger stopped a few feet away, Andre's instincts screamed at him to stay alert. He kept his expression neutral, but his hands instinctively moved to the edges of the counter, ready to press the panic button hidden underneath. "If necessary, can I help you with something?" Andre asked, his voice steady but cautious. The man didn't respond. He shifted slightly, his right hand disappearing into the pocket of his hoodie. Andrea's heart pounded, but he didn't move. And that's when everything changed. Andrea had no idea that the next few minutes would upend his entire life. The man pulled out a gun. It wasn't large, but its presence was undeniable, the kind of object that could silence even the busiest room. Andre's breath hitched as the barrel pointed straight at him. His mind raced, but his body stayed frozen, as if fear had tied him to the spot. "Open the register," the man growled, his voice muffled by the scarf covering his face. His eyes darted around the store, checking for cameras, witnesses, or anyone who might intervene. Andrea raised his hands slowly, palms facing outward, a universal gesture of compliance. "All right, man, just stay calm," he said, evenly. He knew better than to argue or make sudden moves. His priority was staying alive for his family, for his kids who depended on him to walk through the front door every night with trembling hands. Andre pressed the button to open the cash drawer. The soft whir of the register felt deafening. In the tense silence, he began scooping out the bills, laying them neatly on the counter, as the gunman watched every move like a hawk. "Faster," the man barked, slamming his free hand on the counter. The sudden noise made Andrea flinch, and the coins in the drawer rattled. He hurried, emptying the till as fast as his shaking hands would allow. As Andre handed over the last of the cash, he dared to glance at the man's face, searching for anything: hesitation, desperation, maybe even regret. Instead, all he saw was cold determination. This wasn't a man making a mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. "Now the safe," the robber demanded, jerking his chin toward the back office. Andre's stomach dropped. The safe wasn't something he could open. It required the manager's code, and the manager wasn't there. "I can't open it," Andre said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Only the manager has the code." The gunman's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me, I swear, man. It's locked until morning." "There's nothing I can do," Andre replied, holding his hands up again. The robber hesitated, his frustration evident in the way his grip tightened on the weapon. Andrea held his breath, wondering if this was the moment everything would go horribly wrong. Then, without another word, the man grabbed the cash, stuffed it into a worn backpack, and bolted for the door. Andrea exhaled sharply, his knees threatening to buckle. He wanted to feel relief, but it was quickly replaced by anger and helplessness. The man had taken more than just money. He'd taken Andre's sense of safety, his dignity, and a piece of his pride. The store was eerily quiet now, save for the faint sound of a car engine revving in the distance. Andrea glanced at the security cameras, hoping they had caught a clear shot of the robber's face. He reached for his phone and dialed 911, his hands still trembling as he recounted the ordeal to the dispatcher. When the police arrived, Andre walked them through every detail. The man's height, his voice, the gun, the backpack. But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that justice might not come, that this man might get away with everything. Andre thought the worst was over, but in reality, it was just the beginning. The following morning, Andre sat in his tiny kitchen, staring blankly at his cup of coffee. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind, like a broken record. Every detail, every sound, every second of the encounter clung to him, refusing to fade. His wife, Lauren, sat across from him, her eyes filled with worrying as she watched her husband silently wrestle with his thoughts. "You okay?" she asked softly. Reaching for his hand, Andre nodded, but his grip on the coffee mug betrayed him. It wasn't fine. He wasn't fine. The store had been his safe space, a place where he felt in control. Now it felt tainted, like a constant reminder of his vulnerability. By the time he arrived for his shift later that day, the store had already moved on. The cash drawer was restocked, the broken camera near the entrance replaced, and the morning crew had cleaned up like nothing had ever happened. His manager, a balding man named Tom, gave him a pat on the back. "Tough night, huh?" "Don't worry, the cops are on it," he said, as if that would make everything better. But Andre couldn't just not worry. He knew how these things usually went. The police had a lot on their plate, and a petty robbery in a convenience store wasn't going to be their top priority. Sure, they'd filed a report, but Andre had seen too many cases like this disappear into a file cabinet, forgotten. Still, Andre couldn't let it go. Every time he served a customer, he found himself glancing toward the door, half expecting the robber to walk back in. His co-workers noticed his unease, though no one dared to say anything. The incident had changed him, made him more cautious, more guarded. That night after the store closed, Andre stayed late to clean up. As he mopped the aisles, his eyes wandered to the security cameras. He replayed the footage of the robbery, pausing and rewinding, searching for anything he might have missed. There it was in the corner of the frame, just before the robber exited the store. A small detail caught Andre's eye, a patch on the man's worn backpack. It was a logo, faded but familiar. A local mechanic shop a few blocks away. Andre's heart raced as he zoomed in, confirming his suspicion. He knew the shop. He'd passed it every day on his way to work. And now he had a lead. For a moment, Andrea hesitated. Was this something he should leave to the police? Probably. But deep down he knew they wouldn't move fast enough. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming the sense of security and pride that the robber had stolen from him. Andre made a decision. He would handle this himself, but carefully. He wasn't looking for a fight. He just wanted answers. Andre had no idea that the truth he was about to uncover would change everything. The next morning, Andre parked his old sedan a block away from the mechanic shop. It was a small, run-down building with a rusted sign that read, "East Side Auto Repairs." From a distance it looked harmless, just another struggling local business, but Andre's gut told him otherwise. He sat in the car for a moment, formulating a plan. He wasn't the kind of man to act recklessly, and he had no intention of putting himself in danger. This wasn't about confronting the robber directly. No, Andre wanted to observe, to gather evidence he could take to the police, something that would make them act. With his hoodie pulled tight over his head, Andre exited the car and strolled casually past the shop. His eyes scanned the lot, looking for the backpack. Nothing. He circled back, pretending to tie his shoe near the entrance. Still no sign. Just as he was about to leave, a black sedan pulled into the lot. A man stepped out, and Andre's stomach tightened. It was him, the robber. The man was dressed differently now, wearing grease-stained overalls. But there was no mistaking those eyes, or the way he moved. Andrea watched from behind a parked car, as the man unlocked the shop's side door and disappeared inside. He noted the license plate of the sedan. Pulling out his phone to snap a quick photo, his hands were steady now. His fear replaced by a sense of purpose. Over the next few days, Andre returned to the shop during his free time, blending into the surroundings as he observed from a distance. He watched the man come and go, always carrying the same battered backpack. Andre was careful not to get too close, knowing he couldn't risk being seen. One evening as the shop was closing, Andre noticed something unusual. The man stepped out, carrying a large duffel bag. His movements hurried and tense. He placed the bag into the trunk of his car. Before driving off, Andre didn't follow. Not yet, but he knew he had to act fast. That night, he compiled everything he had, photos of the man, his car, the license plate, and even the shop's operating hours. He shared it all with the police, hoping this would be enough to push them into action. Days passed without a word. Frustration simmered in Andrea's chest. He'd done everything he could, but it still felt like no one was taking this seriously. Then one evening, as he sat at his kitchen table, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You think you're smart? Stay out of it, or else." Andrea's heart sank. Someone new. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Maybe he should back off. Maybe this wasn't worth the risk. But as he looked at the family photo, taped to the refrigerator, he knew he couldn't let fear control him. He had to see this through for his kids, for his wife, for himself. Andre had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. The next morning, Andre woke with a renewed sense of determination. He couldn't ignore the threat, but he also couldn't let it paralyze him. He decided to take one final step. Before leaving everything to the police, he would confront the man. But not alone. Andre reached out to an old friend, Tyrone, who worked as a security guard at a nearby warehouse. Tyrone had a calm demeanor, but carried himself with a quiet strength. After Andre explained the situation, Tyrone agreed to back him up. "We're just talking though," Tyrone said firmly. "No hero stuff." That evening, Andre and Tyrone parked near the mechanic shop, waiting for the man to finish his shift. As the last light inside the shop flicked off, Andre's pulse quickened. The man emerged, his familiar backpack slung over one shoulder, and started walking toward his car. Andrea and Tyrone stepped out of their vehicle, closing the distance quickly but cautiously. "Hey," Andrea called out, his voice steady, but loud enough to make the man stop in his tracks. The man turned, his eyes narrowing as he recognized Andrea. "What do you want?" He snapped his hand, instinctively moving toward his pocket. "Relax," Andre said, raising his hand slightly to show he wasn't a threat. "I just want to talk about what?" The man growled, his posture tense. Andre took a deep breath, locking eyes with the man. "About the robbery at Henderson's Market." "I know it was you," the man laughed, but it was forced, uneasy. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know about the backpack," Andre continued, his voice firm. "The logo, the way you left the store, everything, and I gave it all to the police." The man's smirk faltered for a split second before returning. "You think you're a detective or something? You got nothing." Andre stepped closer, and Tyrone stayed by his side. Silent but imposing. "Maybe I don't," Andre admitted, his tone shifting to one of controlled anger. "But I've got enough to make them pay attention. And they will. It's just a matter of time." For a moment the man said nothing. Then his bravado cracked. "You don't understand," he muttered, his voice low. "Then make me understand," Andre shot back. The man glanced around, as if weighing his options before finally speaking. "I didn't want to do it. I needed the money. My kid's sick, and the bills keep piling up." "That's the truth." Andrea stared at him, his own anger mingling with something unexpected. Empathy. He didn't condone what the man had done, but he recognized the desperation in his voice. "That doesn't make it right," Andre said, his voice softer now. "You pointed a gun at me, you threatened my life. That's not something I can just forget." The man nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping. "I know, and I'll make it right. I swear, just give me a chance." Andre exchanged a glance with Tyrone, who gave a subtle nod. "Then prove it," Andre said. "Turn yourself in. Own up to what you did." The man hesitated, but something in Andrea's voice seemed to reach him. Finally he sighed. "All right, I'll go to the station tomorrow." Andrea didn't completely trust him, but he knew he'd done all he could. As he and Tyrone walked back to their car, Andrea felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. The confrontation was over, but Andrea wasn't sure if the story would end the way he hoped. The next day, Andrea's nerves were on edge. He'd spent the morning glancing at his phone, half expecting a call from the police, or some sign that the man had kept his word. By the afternoon, his patience wore thin, and he decided to stop waiting. Andre called the precinct, and to his surprise, learned that the man had indeed come forward. He turned himself in and confessed to the robbery, providing details that matched the security footage. In Andrea's account, the officer on the phone sounded impressed. "Not many people would do what you did, Andrea. He said you handled this the right way." Relief washed over Andre, but it was tinged with lingering anger and sadness. The robbery had shaken his sense of security, and while the man's story of desperation tugged at his heart, it didn't erase the fear he'd felt that night. Still, he couldn't help but feel a small sense of triumph. In the weeks that followed, Andre tried to move forward. The store replaced its security system, and his co-workers often checked in on him. The experience left a mark, but it also taught Andre something valuable: that courage isn't always about physical strength or bold gestures. Sometimes it's about standing firm in the face of fear and doing what's right even when it's hard. As for the man, Andre learned that he'd been sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. The court considered his circumstances and gave him a chance to rebuild his life. Andre didn't feel pity, but he hoped the man would use this second chance wisely. One evening, as Andrea locked up the store after another long shift, he paused to look at the security cameras. The fear that had gripped him weeks ago was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, it had become a reminder of his resilience, a testament to his ability to face the unimaginable and come out stronger. Andrea walked to his car, his head held high. He knew life would always throw challenges his way, but now he understood something he hadn't before. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean acting out of anger or revenge. It means taking control, finding justice, and reclaiming your power on your terms. Life will test us in ways we never expect, but how we respond defines who we are. If you've ever faced a moment that pushed you to your limits, share your story in the comments. Let's talk about resilience and courage, and if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Andrea's journey wasn't just about justice. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, a lesson we can all take to heart. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. For more content, please leave your comments and share your experiences. Thank you for being part of Gill Master Stories community. See you soon.